Welcome classic rock fans to part 2 of the worst on-stage f***ups. If you haven't seen part 1, there is a card just up there. As always, I urge you to click like, subscribe and check that notification bell in the words of Steven Tyler so you don't miss a thing. Share this video. And do check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Reviews. Always much appreciated. Anyway, enough of this flim-flam, let's get on with it, because I know what short attention spans you guys have. That was a joke, by the way. Don't get all huffy with me. Not yet, anyway. Number 10 is Pink Floyd Bright in 1972. This technical hiccup prevented Floyd from debuting many would see as their masterpiece. It was during this performance that Dark Side of the Moon, then titled of course Eclipse, Assorted Pieces for Lunatics, or thereabouts, kind of all went tits up really. It was an inauspicious opening for this iconic album. And they just finished the Mortality sequence, which at this juncture was just a piece of organ music interspersed with quotations from Malcolm Muggeridge, before we got those iconic ka-ching of those cash registers and that tape loop kicked in. Unfortunately, it didn't kick in particularly well. This is where the technical issue occurred, as the tape loop just fumbled to an embarrassing halt.
Due to severe mechanical and electronic horror, we can't do any more of that bit.
You know, Elvis Presley famously said, when things go wrong, don't go with them. And this is sage advice that Floyd heeded, as they rather panicked just announced that they were going to take a short break. They left the stage and came back on playing the Atom Heart Mother Suite in its entirety. Eclipse, Assorted Pieces for Lunatics, was played in its entirety at the next show, which was Portsmouth. Although at this point the piece didn't have brain damage and Eclipse at the end of it. The whole piece itself, when those two songs were added, were played in its entirety for the first time, I believe, at Leicester de Montfort Hall on the same tour. John Harris's book on this subject is absolutely fascinating. Number 9 is Marilyn Manson, New York 1996. This is one of those on-stage dust-ups. It took place at Irving Plaza, the Manhattan nightclub, where Manson was supposed to appear before a select crowd, the beautiful people, if you will. But the performance was cut short when Ginger Fish, the drummer, I mean, what a name, eh? Got hit on the head of a mic stand. The official report is that he actually hit himself. However, there were several witnesses that said it was actually Manson that assaulted him, including techno DJ Moby. He went on to say the whole thing was disgusting. If the police need any witnesses, I'm certainly available. Manson went on to deride the DJ, calling him a TV commercial soundtracker. And he went on to say, on my stage, that kind of violence is completely necessary. And it's just unfortunate Moby wasn't injured. Ouch. Number 8 is Genesis from Aylesbury, 1971. I think it was the 19th of June to be exact. During the encore of The Knife, Gabriel decided to mix things up a little bit. Now, they say that all the world's a stage. I think at this juncture, Peter Gabriel probably wished it was a rather shallow one, because he launched himself into the audience. Now, Steve Hackett, in his autobiography, said Gabriel would often do this after this show and do it very successfully. However, it didn't exactly go to plan at this junction. It was a real kind of Jack Black moment. And you can imagine Genesis fans at this juncture, all bad facial hair, anoraks and LP records tucked under their arms. They decided they weren't playing along here, leaving Gabriel to hit the floor and break his ankle. But they were quite decent about it, because Genesis fans are a nice bunch, believe it or not, and they assisted him back onto the stage, where he could complete and finish the show. Number 7 is The Crazy World of Arthur Brown in Windsor, 1967. The National Blues and Jazz Festival in Windsor, I think it was headlined by the Small Faces. Pink Floyd were scheduled to appear, but I think Sid was having one of his absent moments, and subsequently the band couldn't make it. Now, Arthur Brown, who wore this metal helmet which would be filled with burning methanol, that night just didn't accord with his, shall we say, on-stage gyrations. Of course, the methanol spilt over, setting fire to his hair and cloak. Thankfully, there was a rather quick-witted fan in the audience who decided to douse the flames by pouring his beer over poor Arthur Brown. It was probably a light ale. And as a result, of course, Brown avoided serious injury. But of course he went on to produce some fine music in the 1970s. Kingdom Come, Say No More. There's an interesting quote by Richard Nixon that says the finest steel has to go through the hottest fire, which seems rather appropriate here as Arthur Brown went on to forge some great music. Number 6 is Kiss, 1976 Florida. The band were touring their 5th studio album, which was rock and roll over, a fine return to form in many respects. And a departure from that slavering of strings and production affectations that Bob Ezrin brought to the table for Destroyer, which was also a great album, but a very different Kiss album. Kiss on this tour was supported by Uriah Heep. It was the 12th of December, it was a show opener. Ace was supposed to just make his way down that staircase, same as Gene and Paul. But unfortunately Ace, whose balance wasn't so great. Anyway, he grabbed the metal railing and it wasn't earthed properly, sending electricity surging through him. Thankfully he managed to let go of the railing, which caused him to drop to the floor, and it was a considerable drop, so leaving poor Ace rather battered and bruised. I would like to say the band were playing Shock Me at the time, but unfortunately I'm denied that pun really, because they were launching into the show opener, which was, as you can imagine, Detroit Rock City. Number 5 is Alice Cooper in Vancouver, 1975. There's never been a shortage of blood and guts in Alice's performances, but here there were quite a few broken bones. Now a solo artist, of course, because the Alice Cooper group had disbanded. Alice was on tour promoting his first solo LP. He took the stage on June the 23rd, 1975 in Vancouver, and apparently got tangled up, or got his feet tangled up in one of the props, and fell off the stage. He smashed himself against the security barriers, breaking 6 ribs, and ended up with a concussion. Alice was taken backstage and treated. However, Alice decided to go back on stage and finish the show. I think there's even some photographs of Alice with his head bandaged. Although Alice said, because of my broken ribs, I just couldn't catch my breath. I tried to sing but couldn't get any volume, which of course meant that the show just had to be cancelled. Interestingly, the accident occurred halfway through Welcome to My Nightmare. Number 4 is Patti Smith from 1977 in Florida. On January 23rd, 1977, Patti Smith took the stage and then subsequently fell off it. This was to celebrate the release of her sophomore album, Radio Ethiopia, which was a commercial and critical failure, especially in comparison to the acclaimed debut album. Patti Smith was known at this juncture for a rather animated stage performance. Unfortunately, the stage conditions were far from perfect. She says, I didn't whirl round as much as usual, but when I hit the monitor with my foot, it was half hanging over the stage. This is her reminiscing in an interview she did for Uncut magazine in 2012. We needed more space and light, but we didn't get it, and I had an accident. Well, Patti Smith broke her neck that night, and she was very lucky not to incur more life-changing injuries, shall we say. So, poor stage conditions and poor light attributed to this mishap. You could say because the night, even. Oh dear, that's dreadful. Number 3 is The Who, Tacoma Universal Amphitheatre in 1989. It was the US show. The band had just started playing Won't Get Fooled Again, and eyewitnesses say that Pete's hand, doing his spinning arm windmill thing that he does, which he actually filched from Keith Richards, by the way, his hand went down and people say it just didn't come up again. I think it was Daltrey that said when he did manage to bring his hand up again, there was lots and lots of blood. He said, oh my God, this doesn't look good. Pete Townsend mouthed, ow. But considering the band were playing like 103 decibels, of course, he couldn't be heard. Townsend, of course, had hit his guitar so hard the whammy bar had gone straight through his hand. The show was stopped. Of course, as you can imagine, many felt this would be the end of the tour. But luckily for Pete, there was a leading hand specialist that actually lived in Tacoma at that point. He was called out, he took a look at the injury, he cleaned it. I think gave Pete some painkillers, but said he was very lucky that it missed anything vital and just went straight through. And as far as I know, the tour continued, albeit with Pete with bandaged hand and not so much windmilling, I suspect. Number 2 is Metallica from Montreal in 1992, where things really begin to heat up, shall we say. The band's crew decided to increase the number of half-pound aluminium powder charges used during the performance, all the pyrotechnics that we all love at this sort of thing. Of course, the explosives were situated at the front and the sides of the stage, and James Hetfield, unsure of his stage position, managed to step into like a 12-foot plume, shall we call it. The band were playing Fade to Black, and Hetfield says, and then the pyro guy doesn't see me, and whoosh, a big coloured flame goes right up under me. I'm burnt, my arm, my hand, completely down to the bone, side of my face, hair's gone, and part of my back. He said he watched the skin just bubble and rise on his hand. The show was stopped, of course, and James Hetfield was taken to hospital. Number 1 is Wasp, 1986 in Dublin. The Wasp were known for their rather colourful onstage antics with naked women and blood and the circular saw codpiece and wristbands and lots of raw meat, the early stages resembling a local branch of Dewhurst. But this tour was to promote the Inside the Electric Circus album, and I think they even had the stage that looked like a circus. And of course such an occasion demanded a brand new codpiece, and this one shot flames 9 feet away. A high explosive strapped to your testicles. I mean, what could go wrong? However, the firework had been tested and worked well in rehearsal, but it was the first date of the tour in Dublin the firework exploded. The luck of the Irish, eh? This caused serious burns to Blackie's legs and backside. The band were thinking that this was the end of the tour as they were nursing Blackie's injuries backstage. But he quipped, if we wrote better songs, we wouldn't have to do this shit. Anyway, the tour continued from October 86 to March 87, I believe, with Blackie continuing to use the codpiece without any incident or injury, I should say. Well, there you are. That's 10 onstage fuck-ups volume 2. Please do share this video if you enjoyed it, by the way, and do check out volume 1. There's a card up there, as I said earlier. Please comment below. I'm always interested in your engagement. I'd love to know what you thought of this video. It helps me to decide which direction to go in as regards making future content. Other than that, I'll leave you with my closing salvo, and I will emphasise, please stay safe and well, of course, and keep listening.